Are you considering making a garden and enjoying fresh produce that you grew yourself? In this video, I'll show you how to decide where to plant a garden, how to start, and to plant, what you'll need, and a checklist for what to do once it's all planted. The first place to start is in the kitchen. What fruits and vegetables do you like to eat? Consider making a list. Gardening is definitely more fun if you are growing what you like to eat. Then you can work looking forward to the harvest. Now might be a good time to consider how much time and effort you can devote to a garden. A few minutes each day is the ideal. This will yield better results than just one day on the weekend. This 5 by 20 foot garden takes me about 10 to 15 minutes a day. This container takes about a minute, if that. And this big in-ground garden might need 20 to 30 minutes a day. So the first thing you need to decide is what would you like to grow and how much time do you have to devote? Plant lovers have discovered that there are 6 laws that govern plant growth, and these apply no matter how big or how small your garden is. So let me explain how they affect your garden. If you can master these 6 laws, you can be a great gardener. The first law is sunlight. How much sunlight, you ask? At least 6 hours. 8 hours would be even better. It could be combined, a few hours in the morning and a few more hours in the afternoon. Because the sun shining on the leaves is what gives plants the energy to make vegetables, consider carefully the best sunny spot. Vegetables can't grow without it. They'll just be tall and skinny and always searching for the sunlight. Maybe in the front yard even. Vegetables can be decorative or on your deck or patio. Okay, now considering the list of what you wanted to plant and how much time you have to spend, can you imagine those vegetables growing in your sunny spot? That's what you need to decide. Where is your sunny location? And then the next thing that we'll talk about is the soil. The second law of plant growth is actually air, but since plants breathe through their roots, the air we're talking about is in the soil. As long as there is no standing water, the ground can be cleared of grass and weeds. You could use a shovel or a tiller. If you're using a tiller, just till down far enough to remove the roots and then rake the grass and weeds away, and then till down deeper. Then loosen the soil and break it up and fluff it up and even add to it so that the plants and roots and worms can easily move through the soil and get the air they need. You could add some sawdust from a cabinet shop or leaves from your yard, or a little sand can be worked into the soil to keep it loose. You will love how easy it is to pull weeds out of loose, fluffy sand. And don't worry if you don't have good soil. You can still grow in it, it just needs nutrients. Okay, so first we have the sun, then we have the air, and now we have hydration. Just like we need water for our bodies to function, plants need water to be healthy. Because we all love juicy, full produce, this comes from the moisture in the plant, which comes from water. Of course, it might rain, but to have full, strong, healthy plants, you'll need to fill in between rains with watering. For some reason, bugs prefer plants that are wilted. Giving plants a drink early in the morning before the sun has a chance to hit it will keep the plants from wilting and will actually prevent 80% of your bug problems. That's the secret to bug problems, just water. Consistently hydrated plants get fewer bugs. So how much water? Just a couple of minutes right at the root, enough to wet the soil a few inches deep. After you water, you might want to dig down to see how far the water soaked in. And after a few tries, you'll know exactly how long to water and you'll have it down to a science. It should average between 1 and 5 minutes for each row, depending on how long the row is and what your water pressure is. Maybe 1 minute in the spring and 5 minutes in the summer. Potted plants need less water, so fill up the soil before watering. If it's still moist, you might want to wait another day. Because water is so important to the health of your garden, consider how the water will run when shaping your beds. These ridges keep the water near the roots. This wood keeps the water near the roots. There isn't anything on the bottom of that box, by the way. There's no weed barriers, there's no wood, it's just dirt underneath. An unlined wicker basket makes a great container because it drains so perfectly. The ideal time to water is early in the morning so that the ground will have time to dry before dark. I use a timer when we travel, but I know some people that have their garden on a timer every day. It's ideal not to use a sprinkler because only the roots need water. The leaves actually do better if they don't get wet. A water hose works just fine. You can either lay it at the end of the row and let the water run down, or we've tied a rag to the end of this row so it'll stay in place. And then this bed is actually just slightly lower on the opposite end. Or you could walk down the row and spray the ground around the roots, but not the leaves. All right, so once you figured out how you're going to water your garden, you're ready for law number 4, which is temperature. Planting at the right time of year. Some plants, like these salad ingredients, like to grow in early spring when it's still cool. Think around the time daffodils and tulips are coming up. But these summer vegetables like to be planted just as the trees are getting their leaves. The technical term for this time of year is the estimated date of the last frost. Charts like this are found on the back of seed packets and help you know when to plant. So you see that little map, you just find your area on the map, look over at the colors to the right, and then there are 2 dates. One is the start date, and the other date is the date the plant should be finished. Planting close to the start date will give the plants time to grow before the end date. You can also look on websites like bonnieplants.com or parkseed.com. Those are 2 of my favorites for getting information, detailed information about the plants you want to grow. Okay, now consider the list of plants that you want to grow, and you've looked online or you've looked on the seeds packets and you've figured out what months they need to be planted. Now, if you've missed the ideal planting day by a month or 6 weeks, you might do better to wait till the next planting season. But if it's just been a few weeks ago, then go ahead and plant. And then you'll be able to calendar the day you're going to start your garden. Okay, now assuming that you know where you're going to plant and when, and you have your space already, it's time to shop for seeds and plants. As a rule of thumb, if the store sells the plants, there's probably a good reason. Either they're difficult to start from seeds or the plants grow slowly. I totally get that plants cost more than seeds, but maybe just for your first year, consider buying a few healthy plants to give you a jump start on a good garden. If you look for the 4-pack, they're usually cheaper. And check the plants before you buy them and make sure there aren't any bugs hiding under the leaves or that the top of the plant isn't broken. That's the growing tip, and you're going to need that. You also don't want to buy plants that have little fruit on them because that's a sign that the plants have been stressed and they may not do as well. And checking the tag will give you further information about the fruit. You'll notice that this Better Boy has a 16-ounce tomato. And so if you plant a Better Boy, then that's what you can expect. When, when buying seeds, check the map and dates on the back because stores sell seeds in the spring for the whole year. So even though they sell plants in the store at about the right time for planting them, they sell seeds for the whole year. So be sure and check the time of year. And seeds expire, so use them the year you buy them or freeze them. And once you get the seeds home and you're ready to plant, just follow the planting depth and the spacing on the back. A cool tip is to leave seeds uncovered until you have them all in place, and then you don't lose your place. And when you're ready to plant seedlings, first water the plant, and this holds the soil around the roots. Then dig a hole at least as big as the pot that the plant was in, or according to the directions on the tag, and then water the hole. And put the plant in and cover the roots and firm the soil. And don't expect the plants to grow that first week. They're going to need time to overcome the shock of being transplanted. And when you finish planting, fertilize and water it in. Which brings us to the 5th law of plant growth, nutrition. One tomato plant can produce about 50 tomatoes, which pulls a tremendous amount of nutrients from the soil. So adding these nutrients consistently throughout the growing season will give the plants the ability to keep giving fruit all season long. And it will also avoid common problems that look like disease but are really just a nutritional deficiency. That tomato plant needs calcium. I've included a link to what I use for fertilizer in the description. Follow the recommended schedule for the fertilizer you choose. And now this brings us to the last law of plant growth, protection. This is why gardens need gardeners. Your job is to protect the plants. One way to protect the plants is to keep their leaves off the ground. Stake tomatoes, pole beans, small melons, and cucumbers. Everything else could probably be fine without support. but those need some way of being held up. Remember, the sun shining on the leaves is what gives the plant the energy to make fruit. So the health of the leaves is what determines how much fruit you get. So constantly checking the plant leaves is a good idea. But the plants don't need all their leaves. The lower leaves naturally die and are often the first to get attacked by bugs. So take scissors and prune those off and discard them away from the garden. Then look on the back of the leaves that are still left, looking for signs of bugs. And you can rub those off or cut off the leaves and throw them away. You'll notice the top of this tomato plant is completely skinned of all of its leaves. That's because somewhere on that plant is a very hungry caterpillar. Weeds is something else that the gardener can do, and that is by taking away the weeds, you've taken away one of the bug's hiding places. It's ideal if you get them when they're only about an inch tall, and they're very easy to pull up then. Planting in a straight row makes it easier to tell which are the weeds and which are the vegetables. I also love the way that looks. Don't worry too much about protecting your plants. Mother Nature has provided birds to eat the caterpillars and spiders and ladybugs to eat the aphids. And if something bigger wants to eat your garden, you can put up a simple fence. I'm sure that something will come up that you haven't learned about when you're gardening. That's the case with all of us. Like when I got this early blight on tomato plants. I would recommend that you just take a picture of it and then do a Google search to figure out what it is. And then maybe there's a code, because some plants have been bred to be resistant to that problem. You can just plant a different variety of the same plant, like I did when I planted that mountain merit the next year after my blight, and then the problem was averted and I never had to spray for fungus. Or sometimes the problem is that the plant life is supposed to be over and it's just naturally dying. So you can check online and see if the plant is finished. Squash has a short life. Bush beans have a short life. Just pull them up and discard them before they become a hotel for the local bugs. Okay, this is the last thing, and I'm impressed you're still here, and I'm glad because I've left the best for last, picking the fruit. Pick vegetables as soon as they're ready, and this keeps the plants producing. Sometimes it's tempting to want to let the fruit get bigger, but it's actually better to just pick it young, and then that keeps the plant going. I like to pick my tomatoes when they have a little sunset color to them, and they ripen beautifully inside, away from the bugs that love tomatoes. Pick squash and okra while they're still small, and check the package to know how long cucumbers and beans are supposed to get. Harvest broccoli when the heads are full. Well, that's it in a nutshell. I've included a few links in the description below, including one to my garden blog. So if you have any more questions, maybe you can get the answers there. Happy gardening.